The markets of Archon 7 buzzed with voices, haggling merchants, hissing plasma engines, and the hum of interstellar travelers. It was a place where every species in the quadrant came to trade, to thrive, and sometimes, to vanish. Among the crowd, unnoticed, a small figure sat in the shadows between 2 supply crates. She was thin, painfully so, with grayish skin stretched tight over her small frame. Her eyes, large and luminous, reflected the neon glow of the bazaar. She clutched her knees, hunger gnawing at her stomach. The alien girl had nothing. No family. No home. No name spoken aloud. She watched people pass by, humans with their confident stride, Zelthari with their crystalline carapaces, Dravik traders with sacks of spices, and she begged in silence. None stopped. Until he did. Captain Elias Ward was not a man who usually wandered markets for pleasure. A human trader and former soldier. He was practical, sharp-eyed, and always on guard. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way the girl's eyes followed every passerby with desperate hope. Maybe it was the trembling of her hands as she tried to lift a crumb from the ground. He crouched in front of her. "You hungry?" His voice was rough but kind. Her lips parted, as if the sound of someone speaking to her was a shock. She didn't understand his words, but she understood the tone. Slowly she nodded. Elias reached into his satchel and pulled out a ration pack. He tore it open and handed it to her. She snatched it with a speed born of desperation and ate like she hadn't seen food in weeks. Others glanced at them with disinterest. A starving orphan was nothing new on Archon 7. But Elias didn't move. He sat and waited, watching her finish. When she was done, her glowing eyes met his. For the first time in cycles, she whispered a word in her own tongue. "Thank you." It was broken, accented, but clear. Elias smiled faintly. "You're welcome, kid." Part 1. The girl who was forgotten. Her name, he learned later, was Sira. She was no more than 10 cycles old, abandoned after raiders tore through her colony. She had wandered from station to station, surviving on scraps, overlooked by all. Her species, the Veari, were scattered and dying after years of war. Elias could have walked away. He told himself that. He wasn't a savior. He was a trader barely keeping his ship, the horizon's edge, functional. But something about her stuck to him like a splinter in the heart. When he rose to leave, she followed. Silent at first, then tugging on his sleeve when he tried to shake her off. "Go on," he muttered. "Find somewhere safe." But she only looked at him with those wide, unblinking eyes. By the time he reached his ship, she was still there, standing at the bottom of the loading ramp, small hands clenched, gaze pleading. He sighed. Damn it! That was how Sira stepped aboard his ship, the girl who had nothing. Part 2. A fragile bond. First it was awkward. Elias wasn't used to company. He lived by rules. Order, schedules, efficiency. Sira was none of those things. She was curious, touching every panel, peeking into every crate. She asked questions he couldn't understand, in her halting mix of Veari and broken trade speech. But slowly walls crumbled. He taught her words. Food. Ship. Star. She learned quickly, repeating after him with bright determination. She started drawing with bits of chalk she found, sketching strange Veari patterns on the ship's bulkheads. And for the first time in years, Elias laughed. One evening, as they drifted in orbit above a nameless moon, he caught her staring at the stars through the viewport. Home, he asked gently. She shook her head. No, lost. Her voice cracked. All gone. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we'll make a new one. Part 3, Trouble Brews. News travels fast in space. Word reached Elias soon. The Black Fong Syndicate was hunting for a runaway Vaari child, Sira. The Syndicate had raided her colony. To them, she wasn't just a starving orphan, she was property. They trafficked survivors, using them as slaves, selling them to the highest bidder. And now Elias had her. He thought about leaving her at a safer station, somewhere the Syndicate wouldn't look. But the idea twisted his stomach. He remembered her tiny hands clutching the ration pack, her eyes filled with trust. Whoa. He couldn't abandon her. The first attack came near the Drellith belt. A Syndicate ship emerged from warp, weapons primed. "Give us the girl," the comms snarled. "Or die with her." Elias didn't answer. He gunned the engines and dove into the asteroid field. Sira clung to the chair beside him as plasma fire streaked past. "Hold on, kid." The chase was brutal. The Horizon's Edge wasn't a warship. It was a patched-up freighter. But Elias had flown in battles before, and the Syndicate hadn't expected resistance. Using the asteroids as cover, he turned the tables, blasting their engines and sending the ship spinning. When silence finally returned, Sira looked at him with awe. "You fight for me," she whispered. Elias met her gaze. "Always." Part 4, Found Family. Weeks turned into months. Elias and Sira became more than captain and passenger. They became family. She learned how to fix wiring, how to read star charts, even how to pilot under his watchful eye. She called him Eli at first, then shyly one night, "Father." He froze. The word struck deeper than any wound. He had lost his own family years ago in the wars. He thought he would never hear that word again. But when he looked at her, hopeful, afraid of rejection, he simply nodded. "Yeah, kid. Father works." From then on, they weren't just surviving. They were living. Part 5, The Last Stand. The Syndicate didn't give up. They cornered Elias and Sira on Calvo's Prime, sending 3 ships this time. Elias knew they couldn't keep running. He made his choice. "We end this here," he told her. She trembled but nodded. The battle was fierce. Elias used every trick, every maneuver to keep them alive. Sira, terrified but determined, manned the shields and systems under his command. At the final moment, when their ship was nearly crippled, she did something unexpected. She activated a Vaari artifact she had kept hidden, a crystal shard glowing with ancient energy. It released a pulse that crippled the Syndicate fleet, frying their systems. Silence filled the void. The enemy was beaten. Elias turned to her in shock. "You had that the whole time." She smiled faintly. "Very secret. For family only." He laughed even as smoke filled the cockpit. "Guess I'm family then." Part 6. A New Beginning. After the battle, word spread. The Syndicate retreated, weakened. Other Vaari survivors heard whispers of a human captain who had protected one of their children. Slowly, cautiously, they began to rally. And Sira, once a starving girl in the shadows, became a symbol of hope. But to Elias, she was simply his daughter. Years later, when she grew tall and strong, piloting beside him as his equal, he would sometimes remember the first day he saw her. Weak, starving, forgotten. And he would remember the vow he made. The alien girl had nothing, but he gave her everything.